Hello guys, welcome back to another session, another Bible study together with Bible Unplugged. I'm Wave Nunnally. Last couple of weeks we've been doing our Thanksgiving for the land, the Bible connected to the land, the Bible in context. And so we first started out with a couple of sessions on the city of Jerusalem. We moved then north about 65 miles to the area of Lower Galilee, and that whole context of where Jesus grew up, the context of his growing up years and the beginning of his ministry. Today, we're going to start where we left off there in Lower Galilee and focusing on the city of Nazareth. And we're going to trace Jesus' movement over to the Sea of Galilee. And that's going to be our session, our study session today, is Jesus' ministry around the Sea of Galilee in its full-blown 3D context. So let's pick up with Nazareth and we'll track his movements from there. You may remember this map from the last session we studied together. And this area here is the Jezreel Valley. You're looking at Lower Galilee. This was the Nazareth Ridge that we looked at in the last session. The circled city is the city of Nazareth. And we're going to watch where Jesus moves to the northeast in the direction of the Sea of Galilee, moving from Nazareth to the edge of the Sea of Galilee, 15 miles, and then another 5 miles around the north and northwestern shore of the Sea of Galilee to Capernaum. So just to get your coordinates, get you oriented to this particular map, we talked about places like Mount Tabor right here, the Nazareth Ridge, Cana of Galilee, the city of Shunem, the city of Nain, the city or the village of Ain Dor, the city of Jezreel and Gideon Spring that both back up against this banana-shaped mountain range called Mount Gilboa. So hopefully this puts all of Jesus in growing up in and beginning ministry in Lower Galilee. And now we are going to use some video footage to move him in the direction that the book of Gospel of Matthew chapter 4 says that he went in. Leaving Nazareth, Matthew says, he came and settled in Capernaum, which is by the sea being the Sea of Galilee, in the region of Zebulun and Naphtali, the two tribes that are associated with this particular area in the land of Israel. Here we pick up with the Nazareth Ridge. We saw a little bit of this video last time that we were together, but please notice as the video runs that we have Mount Precipice, the traditional spot where the people of Nazareth wanted to put Jesus to death. And then the Nazareth Ridge as a whole running kind of, again, southwest to northeast in this direction. You can see the newer part of Nazareth growing all the way to the edge of the Nazareth Ridge. And we're moving already in the direction of the Sea of Galilee. As the video moves, so also is Jesus' movement in Matthew chapter 4 from Nazareth to Galilee. The video will move a little bit further in the direction of the Sea of Galilee. Then we're going to go to the next video to pick up on the end of that 15-mile travel route from Nazareth to the northwestern shore of the Sea of Galilee. Right. We're now moving, very quick clip here, the Nazareth Ridge, moving again in the direction of the Sea of Galilee toward the northeast. Here we have the Jezreel Valley in the foreground. We even have the village of Nain or Neen today in the foreground, and Mount Tabor in the background. That hopefully will help you to connect to the realities of the satellite map that we looked at just a moment ago. To trace Jesus' entire trip, he starts in Nazareth. he moves northeast, down up the Nazareth Ridge, down into an extension of the Beit Netofa Valley, and there he meets up with this little red line. That's the Roman road, marks the Roman road, and for a few miles he actually is able to travel along a well-traveled road in his day. Has to break off here and move again northeast along an Old Testament road, not marked by Roman mile markers, and that's the reason that the red road will continue on straight east to the capital city of the area, the regional capital, Tiberias, named for Tiberius Caesar. So then Jesus continues in this northwesterly direction, moving in the direction of the Sea of Galilee, and then has to go through a gorge, a valley between two mountains that we will see on video in a moment. The first city that he will go past, going through the gorge, will be this area here. Circled in yellow, the city of Magdala. You could probably figure out that this is the city, the hometown of one of Jesus' prominent disciples in all of the Gospels, Mary Magdalene. Magdala being her home city, right here on the western shore of the Sea of Galilee. So now we've traveled 15 miles, and to get to Capernaum, his ultimate base of operations for his three and a half year ministry, he will have to move yet another 5 miles, continuing in a northeasterly direction along the edge of the Sea of Galilee from Magdala to Capernaum, the next city that is circled. We will also visit in succession in this segment. We'll visit the city of Chorazin, which is 2 miles to the north of Capernaum. We will also visit Bethsaida, the original home of Peter and Andrew, and probably also Philip and Nathanael. Capernaum and Nazareth being approximately 2.5, Capernaum and Bethsaida being approximately 2.5 miles from one another. Then we will also, at the end of our time together today, we will swing around to the eastern shore of the Sea of Galilee. You can see the foothills here of the Golan Heights coming down, cascading down into the shoreline of the Sea of Galilee, and we will see the village we will be in the area of Gergesa, where Jesus cast out the legion of demons from the man that lived among the tombs there. So let's pick up with then that way of the sea. Isaiah 9 says he will make glorious the way of the sea, the place, the Galilee of the nations, in the land of Zebulun and Naphtali, quoted by Matthew in that same passage in Matthew chapter 4. It runs right through the Arbel Cliffs. And so here we see the way of the sea, the gorge or the valley between Mount Nitai on the right and Mount Arbel on the left. In the very far background on the horizon is a kind of cone-shaped mountain that is called the Horns of Hattin. It is actually an extinct volcano which causes the volcanic look to that mountain. When you get to this area here, through the gorge, and now we're on the Sea of Galilee, or eastern side of this gorge, Jesus coming from Nazareth and walking through this gorge on the road that Isaiah calls the way of the sea. When you get to this point, you are entering the plain of Gennesaret, and we will talk about that as we look at video. Mount Arbel on the left, Mount Nitai on the right, the Horns of Hattin in the background, and this is a part of Jesus' 15-mile journey from Nazareth to the shoreline of the Sea of Galilee, first going past the city of Magdala. Again, Mount Arbel, and then we get our first view of the Sea of Galilee and this beautiful yet small plain that is adjacent to the Sea of Galilee called the Plain of Gennesaret. Jesus preached a sermon here that we read about in Luke chapter 5. There, Luke tells us that Jesus was being pressed upon so much by the multitude that he got in one of the little fishing boats, and he told the owner to cast off a little bit from shore. And after sitting down in the fishing boat, he preached a message that is recorded in Luke chapter 5. It's sometimes referred to as the Sermon on the Plain, as compared to Matthew's Sermon on the Mount in Matthew 5, 6, and 7. So Magdala is right here, and would be eventually excavated beginning in 2009. Sea of Galilee to the background, and then on the backside, the Golan Heights, where we will visit when we go and at the end of our time together to Gergesa, the place of the Gadarene demoniac. So now we're going to take a look at a brief video clip that kind of brings us a little bit closer to this city called Magdala, right on the western shore of the Sea of Galilee, the home of Mary Magdalene, and a place of incredible significance archaeologically and historically today. Just to stay on track, just to make sure that we don't get lost in the detail, we go back to our satellite map and we trace Jesus' journey from Nazareth down up the Nazareth Ridge, east on the Nazareth Ridge, approaching the Sea of Galilee from the southwest, hitting the shoreline just after passing through the Arbel Pass, Arbel Cliffs. Magdala will be on his right. We're now 15 miles from Nazareth. Now we're going to continue after Magdala eventually to Capernaum, 5 miles further to the northeast. But first, Magdala. Hope you have your seatbelts on. You're going to need it for this particular video. We are on the Mount Arbel, continuing northeast, and we are at the very edge of that cliff that you saw from down on the plain of Gennesaret in the previous clip. So as we go over the cliff's edge, you will see on your left the plain of Gennesaret, in the middle the Sea of Galilee, and then down below on the far right the city of, or the location of, Nazareth. Okay, we now have the plain of Gennesaret coming up on your left, the Sea of Galilee in the middle here. This is the west and then the northern shore, and then the area of Magdala right here. We will do a session specifically on Magdala at a point in the future, and we have done one in the past if you want to look back at our archives. Absolutely beautiful and incredibly fertile plain here. Gennesaret probably deriving from the Hebrew phrase Genei Sar, meaning the gardens of the prince, more than likely referring back to the fact that there were princely holdings or aristocratic holdings here in the days of the Maccabees, and we read about that in the books of the Maccabees between the Testaments around the year 130 to about 100 BC. All right, while we're at the shore of the Sea of Galilee, I thought that it might be helpful to kind of connect with its main industry. In ancient times, the Sea of Galilee's main industry was not tourism like it is today, but rather it was the fishing industry. No surprise then that we hear in the Gospels about a lot of fishing activity going on. In the late 1985, early 1986, there was an incredible drought in the land of Israel, and the Sea of Galilee sank approximately 2 meters or 6 feet in terms of its depth, and it revealed a number of really interesting things. One you see on your screen right now. There were lots of harbors that were found, man-made harbors, breakwaters that were discovered that were not known before and were then charted by scholars like Mendel Nun from Kibbutz Ein Gev on the eastern shore. Another important discovery was this boat. It's the only one of its kind in the land of Israel. The closest corollary is found in Egypt, which is totally different culture, completely different world. It's a river as opposed to a lake or a sea, and the fishing is different there. And so now we've got access to a 1st century BC and 1st century AD wooden fishing boat. approximately the same size of boats like it that we have had access to by mosaic pictures on mosaic floors. But this is a beautifully preserved, encased in mud, sunk down at the bottom of the Sea of Galilee, and is approximately 7.5 feet wide by 25 feet long, only able to carry about 8 people at a time. We're going to go ahead and start the video and let you get a little bit of a close-up look at the inside of this fishing vessel. 25 feet long, 7.5 feet wide, and you can see that the planks on the outside are held together by these wooden ribs on the inside. Not incredibly different from the way that wooden boats are still built and built by hand today. I thought it might be good for us to connect a little bit more closely with that fishing culture of the Sea of Galilee. These particular, this picture in this video is about mooring stones, really large stone, and also man-made or handmade anchors, weights to throw overboard to make a fishing vessel stationary. You can see that this one is made of limestone. This one is made of volcanic basalt. You can actually see the pockets that are still evident of air pockets that make this kind of stone, basalt stone, very rough to the hands and great for grinding grain and the like. We're going to start the video, and we'll migrate from larger stones that are used for anchors and for mooring boats that are docked in a harbor to smaller stones that are used, maybe made by fishermen's children, used to weight down a seine net so that the net would, instead of floating on the top of the water, would sink down into the water and would catch fish by their gills inside of the net. This is the kind of net that would have been used with the miraculous catch of fish and the like in the Gospels. Now we're going to move to Capernaum. So we're going from where we left off at Magdala, 5 miles to the northeast, to the city of Capernaum that became Jesus' base of operations. Peter and Andrew had moved from Bethsaida, 2.5 miles to the east, down the northern shoreline, along the northern shoreline to Capernaum, owned a home, owned a business, and there we pick up with all kinds of biblical narratives about Jesus healing Peter's mother-in-law, about Jesus casting a demon out of a young man in the synagogue, and that kind of thing that you read about in the Gospels. So now we will go to the city of Capernaum. We're moving from the northeast to the southeast, or along the northern shoreline. This is the Greek Orthodox Church of the 12 Apostles. You can see the shoreline of the Sea of Galilee at the bottom of the screen, and now we come to Capernaum proper. Underneath this dark building is the Church of St. Peter, a Roman Catholic church. We also have a little monastery that is there, and now we're looking at the Sea of Galilee from behind the excavations at Nazareth. This particular building here, the white building, is a later synagogue, probably from the 4th or 5th century AD. So not the synagogue in terms of the floor, the walls, and the ceiling that Jesus knew. Evidently an earthquake had destroyed that one, but there was an earlier synagogue that was evidently underneath this one. Its foundation can still be observed today. It's made of a different kind of rock. That white rock had been imported. The indigenous darker basalt volcanic rock is what the foundation is made of, that can be seen here, and also on the other side of this synagogue in Capernaum. There's that darker basalt rock there composed the foundation of the earlier synagogue. Sea of Galilee, of course, in the background. Absolutely beautiful view that we get to enjoy today. Since we can't go there literally, we can go there digitally. And so we're just really glad to have you on the bus today. The Sea of Galilee, it's 13 miles long from north to south and about 7 miles or 6.5 miles wide from side to side, east to west or west to east. Gorgeous location here at Capernaum. We usually spend a couple of hours here sitting on benches, sitting in the shade that these trees provide, some wonderful sitting areas that we can then use to discuss the nature of synagogues and Jesus' ministry in synagogues. And then we move to the synagogue itself and discuss its architecture, the archaeology surrounding that. From there, we move along this area that is simply homes, and there we find a series of homes, at least 5 of them that had stairs going up the outside wall of the home, not indoors like we would expect, but outside of the home, which is likely the backdrop of the story of the paralytic man carried by 4 friends that couldn't get into the home, but was taken up on the roof and let down through a hole they made in the roof. This just simply is great backstory and corroborates the accuracy of those that gospel story, in that you couldn't hardly hoist a man up onto the roof if you didn't have access first yourself, and then it would be really difficult to get a full-grown man who was unable to move and help himself up a wall and onto the roof without the help of some series of steps. These excavations have helped to clarify, to help us to understand the dynamics behind that particular story. Sea of Galilee in the background, moving from this home area, family area. We are still in a family area underneath this church, can be seen through plexiglass, that archaeologists have identified as the home of Peter and Andrew, and probably eventually morphed into the earliest church ever existing, 1st century church. We're moving now from Capernaum to Chorazin, and we will then consider, or rather Bethsaida. We will consider 2.5 miles to the east, another city very important to the ministry of Jesus, because the disciples come from there, and Jesus speaks of Bethsaida. He also visited Bethsaida and healed a blind man, the man that saw originally, or at first, men like trees walking, who then eventually was completely healed. So Bethsaida. We're moving from the area of Capernaum along the northern shore of the Sea of Galilee. Again, a beautiful shot of almost the entire sea from north to south. This is the west side, this is the east side, and now we enter into another valley. This is the plain of Bethsaida. The reason for that is this clump of trees here has been very recently identified as the city of Bethsaida, the city of Peter and Andrew, Philip, Nathanael, and possibly other of Jesus' disciples. This city was another fishing village. One reason we know that, is that the name Bethsaida in Hebrew, means the place of the fishermen. And so Bethsaida not only is just off of the northern shore of the Sea of Galilee, but this is the northern Jordan River that flows right past the city of the town of Bethsaida before entering the Sea of Galilee right here. This is actually the primary source for the fresh water that we have in the Sea of Galilee. Sea of Galilee is the lowest freshwater body of water on the Earth's surface. It's 692 feet below sea level, and then in terms of depth, it goes down another 142 feet below the sea's surface. That's a relatively shallow body of water, which it can be demonstrated very easily in terms of just throwing a rock in a mud puddle as opposed to throwing a rock in a swimming pool. It's much more easily upset by earthquake activity or seismic activity, or by winds and the waves that winds create in the midst of a storm. So there you have yet again more backstory behind the stilling of the storm, Jesus walking on the water, and the like. The disciples being afraid, thinking that they're going to perish. The Sea of Galilee, because of its lack of depth, is a pretty volatile body of water. So the area around the area of Bethsaida on the northeastern shore of the Sea of Galilee. Now we visit Chorazin. If you go back to Capernaum, backtrack 2.5 miles and turn right, you go north. And you go 2 miles almost due north from Capernaum, and you get to the city of Chorazin. So in terms of this satellite map, Capernaum, the base of Jesus' operations, to Chorazin, a place again where Jesus claims that lots of miracles in his ministry took place in this location. So here we are at Chorazin. Here's your road access that you're driving down as we come through our digital bus. And then we turn into this parking lot, and this is where you do your digital parking. Here you get your entrance tickets, which have already been purchased for us, but they get stamped. Then you get to, and you also get to get ice cream and pop and whatever you want there. But there's also, in this next building, a bathroom, wonderfully located before we begin to visit the archaeological excavation of the city of Chorazin. I'm going to go ahead and start the video. And as we rotate around the city of Chorazin, I'll point out just a few things that we also point out when we're studying together on site. One of those things is the area of a very large home that was capable of housing over 150 people. There's a major courtyard in the middle. This is called the insula type of dwelling. I've written 2 articles on that you are more than welcome to access online. We're continuing to rotate around to the synagogue building, which is here. And then there are some industrial areas for the processing of olives and olive oil here. Neat thing about this video is now as we process on to the north of Chorazin, we can actually look at the lake, which is 2 miles away. You go straight down this drainage system here, this wadi or Nahal Chorazin, that dives straight into the north shore of the Sea of Galilee. Just a little bit off to the left here would be Capernaum, down on the seashore, the northern shore of the Sea of Galilee. So this puts things really into vivid context for you, and I hope that you're able to capture these images in your mind and to retain them. It's nothing like being there. That really imprints this stuff on your mind. But for now, in the middle of COVID and maybe shortly afterward, when we can't go, we can at least go there digitally. Thank God for that. Jesus said of Chorazin in Matthew 11, and there's a parallel in Luke chapter 10, woe to you Bethsaida, and woe to you Chorazin. Had the many mighty works that were done in you been done in Tyre and Sidon, they would have repented in sackcloth and ashes long ago. And so Jesus is saying, I was there. I did stuff here. You saw it, but you failed to respond appropriately to the grace of God that was extended to you. So Jesus has somewhat harsh words for these locations that he made lots of investment in and yet got very little return in terms of folks who were willing to accept his messianic identity and get on board with following him. Now we move past Bethsaida and we move on to the city of Gergesa, the area of the Gadarene demoniac. Again, we go because we want to make sure that we're not lost in detail. We're going to go back to the satellite map. We were just at Chorazin. We have already visited Capernaum, 2 miles to the south of Chorazin, 2.5 miles to the west to the east, we see the city of Bethsaida, which we have visited, and now we swing around onto the eastern shore. It's the only location on the eastern shore that we're going to see. It's about 5.7 miles from Capernaum to Gergesa, which probably explains the reason for Jesus, instead of going by foot, which is even longer, that Jesus and the disciples decided to take a boat to the other side after the feeding of the 5,000 to then encounter this man that we sometimes incorrectly call Legion. It's the demons that are called Legion, not the man. So here we find then the area of Gergesa. This is the steep cliff, more than likely. It could be this one, but it's too far. These are the Golan Heights on the right-hand side of the picture. So this is a very steep hill, but it doesn't go directly into the sea. When the sea is a little bit higher, as it has been like last year with lots and lots of rain, the sea was all the way up here. And so the steep cliff here ran directly down into the Sea of Galilee. This is the eastern shore. We'll play the clip. This shows the area of Capernaum here, about 5.5 miles away. And the beauty of this particular video is that as the camera pans, it will move us along the northern shore until we get 2.5 miles to the east to the area that is the plain of Bethsaida. So you get the whole picture in your mind of these gospel events. Just off of the screen now to the left, Capernaum. On your screen in the back is the plain and the town of Bethsaida, and then in the foreground is this area of Gergesa or Gadara. The location of the event recorded in its most lengthy version in Mark chapter 5, and Jesus encountering this man who was possessed by demons, then causing the demons to come out. They entered a herd of swine that then rushed, according to the Bible, rushed down the steep slope and into the Sea of Galilee. We won't go into any greater detail on that story because we just recently dealt with it in our discussion of Jesus' miracle-working activity. And included in that particular study was a treatment of Jesus' exorcisms. And we put that in context with material from between the Testaments, stuff right around the time of Jesus, and then even briefly afterward in the works of the early rabbis, in terms of contextualizing Jesus' exorcistic or deliverance ministry. So we started with a discussion of Jesus' exit from Nazareth, where he had exercised messianic authority to quote or to read the book of Isaiah, and then to claim that Isaiah 61, the Spirit of the Lord God is upon me, to then claim that he is the fulfillment of that. So he has that messianic authority to interpret and apply the Hebrew Bible or Old Testament. Here we conclude our study today with yet another example of Jesus' exercise of messianic authority, that in the area of Gergesa, where the demons came out of the man, the legion of demons that then rushed down the hill, all at the command of Jesus, all in obedience to his messianic authority. So a really neat place to stop this time. We'll pick up with yet another study in our next segment, but this helps to put things together, bookends, where Jesus starts out this study in Nazareth, migrates to the area of the northern shore of the Sea of Galilee, a 3.5-year ministry. These cities that were once upon a time in a land far, far away, once upon a time, and they lived happily ever after. Now we see the meat on the bones. We see the realities of these locations. Not myth, not legend, not make-believe, not a fairy tale, not a bedtime story, but these events in the life and ministry of this authoritative Messiah are couched within the context of physical, observable, tangible reality. I'm so thankful for that. I'm grateful to a God. I'm thankful at this time of year, this time of Thanksgiving. I'm super grateful that we have a God who didn't just kind of give people weird, mystical dreams and visions, but He put His Word into time and space. He put His Word onto a playing board. He didn't tell us to play Monopoly without the board. He gave us the playing board. And boy, is it cool. Boy, is it real. So thanks for getting on the bus with us again today. We hope that you'll join us on another session as we put the Bible into context. This is what we do at Bible Unplugged. This is what God has called us to in our lives and in our ministry to you. I trust it'll have been a blessing to you, and I trust that as you go forth, you'll go forth with greater clarity and a greater sense of mission as you go out to represent your God in your world. God bless you. Have a great week.